Hello, everyone. Oh boy, that splash play music is going. That won't get annoying at all, but it's an early Week 16 preview, a first look at what's going on because it's Christmas weekend, and there is a lot of football going on Christmas Eve as well as Christmas Day, so I'm going to dig into it as the theme really ratchets up. Is this too annoying? You tell me in the chat. Let's get right into it, starting right away with the odds for Week 16. It might be too loud, honestly. Let's ramp it down a little, that splash play theme that I personally love so much. And don't get to play now because we just get right into the content. Can't waste time on intros here. But Saturday, December 24th, Christmas Eve, I will be doing the deeper dive stream on Stochastic right before I head out to New York to hang out with my family for Christmas Eve with our little baby Luca and my wife Alex. But we got New Orleans, Cleveland, a hideous 31.5 implied total that actually might be the lowest of the year for both teams. So something to keep in mind here. Cincinnati, New England, 41.5. Buffalo, Chicago, 40.5. There is not a lot to love in these game totals for some of these games coming on. And honestly, some of them, like this New Orleans, Cleveland one, you got to wonder if maybe the starters don't even play relative to what you'd expect in that game. So something to keep in mind here. Shout out to Jason. Shout out to everybody who hangs out with me in the chat saying, love it, Spags. Look, I hope you enjoy the theme song because it's got to pep me up here to keep that energy going as we talk about odds. Buffalo, Chicago, pretty low total there. You'd expect the Buffalo steamrolling. The Bills defense very good. Chicago defense not very good, despite them putting up a pretty good fight against Jalen Hurts and possibly injuring his shoulder. But that's a game that you would think the Buffalo side will still have some popularity on Saturday. Seattle, Kansas City is what I think will be the shootout of the week, or the one that at least people target as though it is. Has one of the highest totals of Saturday, 48.5 implied points. Kansas City, we know, can get the job done against any team, but especially against Seattle, who overall is not that great defensively in any position, but let alone against the pass, where Kansas City we know thrives the most. The Giants in Minnesota, 47 point. I have to stop. Ross, is the music that Mario climaxes to? I hope so. I'm excited to see Chris Pratt's interpretation of what that looks like for ejaculating, I presume, in Mushroom Kingdom. Giants in Minnesota, another game people will probably target. The Giants seemingly going to not lock into a playoff spot, but now have an 80% chance of making the playoffs. They should be in a good situation. Minnesota, hopefully we'll get some production going for Justin Jefferson. Man, I'm relying on very much in the best ball playoffs this week, but also the Giants defensively, do slog things out, do tend to make games pretty ugly. 47.5 implied total does seem like they're going to play more of Minnesota's game, where they give up ungodly amounts of points to any team that goes against them, including the Colts, and then win the game anyway, despite coming back from a historic deficit. Atlanta, Baltimore, another ugly implied total there, 37.5 points. This is really the theme of both the Saturday games and the Sunday games. For whatever reason, whether it be how the NFL has just been this year, because it's Christmas, maybe these guys aren't used to playing that Christmas Day. I know Tom Brady talked about it outwardly. Very low totals across the board. So I think it's true the fantasy industry as well, like the content you're going to see for people, myself not included, of course, this week is going to be super half-assed. It's the holidays. People are literally gearing up for games that they're going to be going on when they're with families, when they're celebrating, of course, these high holy days of the birth of our Lord and Savior, whatever you want to believe. I don't know. Point being, though, it's going to be a weird week for football, so it's important for you to do your own prep and not rely on everybody else out there holding your hands. That's why hopefully this will provide some value for you guys. Houston and Tennessee, 37 implied points. Derrick Henry, I would think, should be very popular this week overall, but that is a very low implied total going on. Obviously, Houston, we know, can sometimes not pull their weight on their side, but the situation for me seems like one where I think Derrick Henry will be very chalky. That's part of why he's in that optimal lineup on the thumbnail, even though there are no projections to go with. San Francisco, Washington, 39.5 implied points. That feels like one where the Niners defense should absolutely shut down a Washington team who probably played themselves out of the playoffs with that loss on Sunday Night Football. Philadelphia, Dallas, that is the game that matters the most to me this week because I desperately need Jalen Hurts to play. I will be honest with you guys, and I think this is something too where, we could talk more about the best ball advance rate stuffs. I know our community in general here loves to talk about that. I see people touting 20% advanced rates for their semifinals rounds. I don't think that's possible. I'll be honest with you, unless you put in 5 entries and you moved on 2 of them, it's basically a 2% advance rate you should expect as a high, like closer to 1.3 in a lot of tournaments out there. DraftKings, where they're only advancing 1, it's going to be a little bit lower. That said, I am stoked for my 3 DraftKings Millie Maker teams, my Underdog, Best Ball Mania, 2 teams going on there, 4 in the puppy, 4 in the puppy, 3, I think 3 in the actual puppy. That's what keeping it real is. Like, you got to be happy for the bullets you have. So I've seen some weird shit going on with Twitter posts, people posting about their advance rates. Don't listen to it. I think there's a lot of people that are fudding and lying, honestly, to try to make themselves look good. Same thoughts, though, that I've said to you guys a bunch of times here. So we'll talk when we get into week 17. We can share the ride then. For now, though, I just want to exercise caution where you see people talking about that a little too enthusiastically. Vegas, Pittsburgh, another ugly total here. So really, if you're going to go off that Saturday slate, you are definitely going to want to target Seattle, Kansas City, New York Giants, Minnesota, and then Philadelphia, Dallas. Again, hoping that Jalen Hurts plays in that game. But either way, Gardner Minshew, people love him quite a bit. I do think Gardner Minshew has a lot higher likelihood of getting gobbled up by that Dallas defense. We'll see. Sunday, we got Green Bay and Miami, a high 49.5 point implied total. They will be the team that everybody builds around if you end up playing on Christmas Day. I'm not sure if I will be playing. I think I will because we're going to be hosting. So I think that is one where if I'm at home, I'm gambling on football here on a 3-game slate. People are not paying enough attention. I think Green Bay and Miami would be the one you want to target the most. And Green Bay stacks, Miami stacks in particular, I think in that game will come up quite a bit. Denver and the Rams, dog shit game for that one. So that's not one I'd want to play much of. But you'll have to if you're playing on Sunday on Christmas Day. And Tampa Bay and Arizona, again, Tom Brady not happy to be playing this one. A game that really ugly one on Arizona's side. Might not have Colt McCoy. Might not have anything of note in that game. Marquise Brown, it seemed like, didn't want to play this past week. So that's what we're dealing with overall for Week 16's prospects on those 2 Christmas Day games. Should I turn the music off now? That's the question I'm going to ask myself and argue that, yes, I should. But let's build some lineups here. And of course, I'll reply to you guys in chat in a moment here, but let's pull up this Saturday slate so you can see on DraftKings, the Millie Maker on Christmas Eve is going to be a good one. And I have to give a shout out to my boy Ross here. Same on Hurts. My only advancing team is Hurts/Kyler. I expect $2 million from DK if I take it down with zeros at QB. Ross, you were preaching to the choir here because one of my teams is in fact a Hurts-Kyler build. Then I have a Hurts build with Kirk Cousins, which I feel pretty good about. Justin Jefferson and AJ Brown, the big thing advancing me on DK. Honestly, fuck it. Before we build for weeks, it's tough because I know I should build for week 16 first. Let's just talk about the DK teams that I have going on because I'm excited about them. I know why you would be as well for yours. I think I do have some better teams than the puppies overall, but here's my DK teams that you can see here. 3 advancing into the next round. Jalen Hurts, Miles Sanders, Rashad White, AJ Brown, T. Higgins, Justin Jefferson, George Kittle, Michael Thomas, guaranteed to give me a 0 in week 17. That's a delight. Kirk Cousins, Kenyon Drake, KJ Hamler, Khalil Herbert's coming back, guys. We got something going for me. Terrace Marshall, Jerick McKinnon, JD McKissick, probably not coming back. Elijah Moore, worthless. Zach Moss shares looking pretty good moving forward. He's going to give me 9 fantasy points and not much more. Chris Olave, Amari Rogers, Irv Smith. That's one of my teams. Jalen Hurts again. Christian McCaffrey. How did I end up with Christian McCaffrey, you wonder? Sometimes I draft teams not on stream, and that's where I get a little bit RB piggy in my life. But Christian McCaffrey, Kenneth Walker, Gabe Davis, T. Higgins, Tyreek Hill, George Kittle, Devonta Smith. I do think one thing that I like a lot from teams that I've observed is drafting that number 2 receiver and hoping that's the part of the stack that gets you there. Because I have so many Diggs, Devontae Adams teams that died on the vine this past week. Crushed me because as a 0 RB guy, you really wanted those 2 to get there. But that is a situation for me that is not going to be the case. So Gabe Davis advances on here. I don't think I have any shares of Diggs moving forward. Tyrion Davis-Price probably not going to play. Dallas Goedert getting back in. Khalil Herbert again. Khalil Herbert, could he be the guy you need in week 17? I fucking hope so. Jerick McKinnon again. John Mechie, that's how you can tell how early this one was drafted. And again, that's why you draft all off season long, guys. You don't just draft in August. You draft in July, you draft in June, because sometimes these values end up being very meaningful. Rashad Perriman, no way I would have drafted that guy in August. Yet here we are. Rashad Perriman on this team. Isaiah Spiller, Tua is on this team, so that's a positive if Hurts doesn't go. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, James White, who's literally retired, and then Cedric Wilson, one team advancing for me. And my last one on DraftKings, again, Jalen Hurts showing up. Tyler Algier, the man that if you've been watching Splash Play all off season long, I saw people, I appreciate everybody who came on to Pete's Deposit Kingdom Discord and shouted me out for Algier. Algier may literally be the guy you need down this home stretch of the season. We have Ramondre Stevenson, AJ Brown, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill. Talk about pristine 0 RB shit going on. That is the case right here. Kyle Pitts coming along for the ride. A player that means absolutely nothing to the ecosystem, but I'm happy to give him a championship ring. Marquise Brown, I don't think he's going to play. Jerome Ford maybe matters in week 16, week 17. We'll see based on that low total in that Cleveland-New Orleans game. Mark Ingram, he's probably done. Cole Kmet, he's playing. Isaiah McKenzie's still playing. JD McKissick doing nothing. Rondale Moore doing nothing. Zach Moss, did I know going into the year that I was going to be the world's preeminent Zach Moss fan in the final weeks of this best ball season? Didn't think so, guys. But here we are, Zach Moss and the Colts being the thing that could potentially push me into a lot of money. Kyler Murray, Khalil Shakir, Devonta Smith, Jamal Williams, and Jamison Williams, both the Jay Williamses on this team. Perhaps I got confused and drafted them. I don't know. But either way, those are my DraftKings teams. Underdog, maybe we could share later in the week because I feel like it's a mess on there right now. But I do have two moving on the best ball mania. Unfortunately, at least as far as I'm aware, unless one of mine and Pete's that he has on his account got there, I don't think Pete and I are advancing together. So that's a bummer. We also had a big board team that didn't make it through by, I think, like 0.7 points, thanks to Aaron Jones getting there last minute. So that was a bummer too. But gotta give the full vouch, my full acid support behind Underdog, because that was a lot of fun. As I said, all off season long, though, I did think that DraftKings is the more EV approach to go to. Better expected value there because the drafts were less sharp, and also full point PPR. People didn't really fully compartmentalize how that affected the draft rooms and the ADPs. So I would say the same thing heading into next year for you guys. I'm sure I will be here pretty much 5 days a week doing best ball streams all off season long. So have no fear. You'll get a lot more of my takes next year. But I really do think we all love Underdog. I would love it if you use the promo code SPLASH over on Underdog to double your deposit to $100. But for best ball, I think your yield might be better on DraftKings, even with the lower advance rates overall, with only one person moving on in a lot of the tournament formats. All right, let's talk about the Saturday slate. As we mentioned, again, the highest total game of the week is going to be that Seattle-Kansas City one, or the highest total game, rather, of Christmas Eve. I think that makes Mahomes a play that's going to come up with an optimizer. And full disclosure here, I did not see Stochastic update their projections yet. I don't subscribe to TTR, so I don't have theirs. And Football Outsiders ones I don't use for DFS. They're great for season-long formats, but I think for DFS, there's some stuff in there that's not the most valuable. So that's just me being honest again, as I always can do here on Splash Play. But I do think Patrick Mahomes will portend as one of the best projected QB plays of the week. Well, who will you stack with him? I do think Kelsey is an option, so I'm going to put him in right now. Actually, this isn't the way I usually do this show, huh? I think I usually go position by position. So never mind. Let's just scroll through the positions here. Josh Allen should be able to beat up on Chicago. That said, weather in Chicago, I've not looked up yet. It is a shockingly low total in that game. I guess they would assume perhaps in the Vegas total that we see Josh Allen completely dominate the game while Justin Fields gets gobbled up. That's not something I'm hoping for necessarily, but it is, I think, what that total would tell us. Josh Allen, though, the Bills should get what they want in this spot. Does that mean feeding Diggs? I don't know, because they really have not fed Diggs that well. Same thing for Gabe Davis. We've seen some outlier Dawson Knox days. I honestly am curious for the best ball playoffs, like how much Diggs actually advanced, because that was a dud game. Like that was a real dud game. And I think there are also a lot of people like me who probably had Diggs with Adams. And if that's the case, like if you're a full zero RB bro, you got completely fucked by those two guys, both putting 10-ish DK points up. So Josh Allen, I don't know his advance rate. I'm curious to see it. I've not seen the intel out there yet from our Underdog friends or anybody else out there. But Josh Allen for DFS, I think certainly a good play, even if it might be hard for him to pay off that price tag with that low Vegas total for the week. Mahomes, as I talked about, in a great spot here, just keeps crushing week after week. And it also helps for both Mahomes and Allen. These guys are playing for the bye week right now. It's honestly makes it harder for the best ball playoff drafts, for the actual, or rather playoffs best ball, I think is what we should call that, like the gauntlet, the mitten, all that stuff in Underdog. I don't know if Mahomes or Allen will be the bye team, and I think that's going to go down to the wire. So that right now, I think the records favor the Bills being the bye team, but it's basically, dead even for them. So it just depends who blows a game or who doesn't blow a game down the home stretch. But Mahomes definitely has motivation playing against Seattle. Seattle's defense not that good. Seattle's offense also going to get worse. So maybe Mahomes doesn't have to go balls out in this one with no Tyler Lockett. He's definitely going to be out this week. So Mahomes, though, a good tournament play, definitely a play that I'm intrigued by. Jalen Hurts, if he does play on Saturday, and there were some reports right before I started the stream that Hurts apparently is interested in playing, I think was what I had seen, wants to play, certainly knows that he can win the MVP if he plays. I'm actually had one of my friends, our guy, Lou Tibbs, who's one of the regulars here in the community, asked me about what he should do with his Jalen Hurts MVP ticket. I think if you have a Jalen Hurts MVP ticket and he doesn't play this week, I'd be inclined to cash it out if you know that by Friday or Saturday, just because I think it's tough for him if he doesn't play the last 2 weeks. Like if they win this week, I think they clinch the bye. If they win with Gardner Minshew, they're just going to let Gardner Minshew play out the string for the season. So I do think your Hurts MVP is at risk. Everything is at risk for him, but he's a gamer. He apparently hurt his shoulder and then demanded to be pulled up by his offensive lineman, didn't want to stay down for the medical team. So I think Hurts plays. I think this game versus Dallas is, I know somebody based in Philadelphia that absolutely hates the locals, to be clear. But they're really dead set on this game, really passionate about this game on Christmas Eve. I think Hurts will go, But obviously, as you saw from my teams advancing in the DK Millie Maker there in best ball, like I'm very biased right now for Jalen Hurts, very biased for AJ Brown, very biased for the Philadelphia Eagles that I personally hate so much. Justin Fields would have a hard time playing him in this spot. Was impressed by what he did against Philly, but at his salary, 24-ish fantasy points isn't going to win you much. You need him in these cozy matchups like Detroit, like Miami, where he did have the tremendous upside. He also basically has no receivers left at this point. Like Equanimous St. Brown got hurt in that last game. He threw a touchdown to Byron Pringle. Like it's hard to get there for Fields at this point, though best ball shares with him certainly perfectly fine. Lamar Jackson seems like they're hopefully he's going to practice this week. I think that's a tough one. Lamar, man, the Baltimore is pretty much a lock to make the playoffs. So I don't think they force him into action. Obviously, if he's practicing, he should be good to go. But I think right now, I would think that Lamar might sit one more. Derek saying, I'm glad I'm not the only one thinking Hurts is a chance to play. Everyone's already ruling him out. I agree. Like, I think that's one of the things that people do. A sprained shoulder, like he played through it. Like, I understand from the risk profile, you certainly don't want him to make it worse, but it seems like it's more of a pain tolerance thing from everything I've been reading. So I'm not a doctor here, but I do think Jalen Hurts is a gamer. I think he knows that's at stake for his personal career. Like winning the MVP as Jalen Hurts is a guy people have really shit on and really tried to make not a quarterback at points in his career. I think it'd be big for him to win that award. So I think he'll try to go, especially because it is playing Dallas and it's not just like a cupcake matchup. Like I really think Gardner Minshew would be in dire straits playing Dallas on Saturday. I know people love him, but I just don't buy the hype. Joe Burrow, tough matchup against New England. I have not seen anything in that New England defense besides the one game that Minnesota played on Thanksgiving that made me feel like teams could really strafe them. We saw Devontae Adams again got shut down. Obviously, Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow being back in the mix, that does make it tougher. But I really think that Joe Burrow, this is going to be a tough game for him. And Joe Burrow is a guy I'm relying more on underdog this year. So I certainly would like to see him survive, like to see him do enough here, but I think it's going to be an ugly game here. And again, it's an ugly total for that game as well against New England. Kirk Cousins, he is very live as a play. So I do feel like for my DraftKings teams that might not have Hurts, Cousins is a nice play. DFS wise, also a nice play. You know, Minnesota still could theoretically clinch the bye. And also I think they know that they kind of need to show something as a team here down the home stretch because that defense is not going to do anything to keep them in games. Again, as we saw, like you can't give up 33 points to the Colts to start a game. Some of that was defensive, some of that special teams, whatever. I get that. But it still was a really tough look for them where they need to shoot out in every game. Like if you really want an exciting playoffs, a couple of rounds here, the way you get that is the Vikings advancing, because otherwise it's just a bunch of shut down NFC kind of defensive minded teams like the Cowboys, like the Eagles, like the Niners. So Kirk Cousins this week, he's playing one of those toughish teams. The Giants more the middle of the pack, but still I think he is a great tournament play this week. Certainly one that probably will be coming up with the projections as well. Dak Prescott, it's tough going against Philly, and it's tough because I don't think he's even had a real ceiling game this year. He's another guy who's not cracked 30 fantasy points this year, same as Justin Herbert. That is something that makes me not have a lot of love for him. That said, if he's going to do it, it probably is a game against Philadelphia where you have to pass more, but that defense is so tough. I just don't see Dak being a play I love, though it is a nice salary on him. Sean Watson, really ugly total going against New Orleans, which makes me think that maybe Watson might get sat. I just don't get why that total was so low for the New Orleans-Cleveland game. But if he goes, like Cleveland, I think is a pretty decent team right now. Deshaun shows improvement week to week. Obviously, the game scores here won't necessarily show that, but I thought he looked okay against Baltimore. Probably could have done more, but didn't really have to in that spot. So I think for me, Deshaun would be live as a play. If we know he's going, it's a low team total. People won't be there, but New Orleans defense, like legit gave up good production to Desmond Ridder. And actually, if you want to dig in deeper, if you're a guy who wants to watch the tape, go check out Hayden Winks' Twitter because he linked a thread kind of detailing what Ridder did in that game. There was a lot more on the table for him to take, and Ridder still did a pretty good job with it. Deshaun Watson is a pro. I think if he's going against New Orleans, even with a shitty total, I'd be willing to take the Flyers on him just because it is a Saturday slate. People will be paying attention, and I think people will just play those Vegas totals even more straight away than they normally would. If that ends up wrong, you see Deshaun have an outlier day that nobody's on. And again, that's a really low total to the point that I could be completely wrong, but I think there is still some upside for him in that spot. Geno going against Kansas City honestly might come up in an optimizer when the projections are out from all the various sites out there. Going against Kansas City, obviously going to require more pass production. His target concentration will also go more heavily towards DK Metcalf. Marquise Goodwin, more of a fill-in historically for Metcalf than he is for Tyler Lockett. So I'm not entirely sure how that part of it goes, but I think a Geno DK Metcalf stack looks pretty appealing for this week. So that could definitely be an appealing one overall. Nate pointing out blizzard conditions in Cleveland. I mean, we kind of saw how that worked out in Buffalo, where even we saw the snow screen grabs all day long on social media, and then the game actually plays, and the snow is kind of a non-factor for the most part. So if that's why the Vegas total's so low and, the blizzard does actually come, then certainly be mindful of the Vegas total. I do think, though, at this point of the week, like if the weather does clear up or if the patterns move around a little, it just seems like that's too low of a total against a team that really can't defend the pass very well in New Orleans side. And Cleveland, too, gives up so much production on the run game that, like, it does kind of make sense that I think either way there could be more scoring. But, who am I to question Vegas? Obviously, there's a reason they're building casinos, and I'm here wearing a money hat. We are not the same. Daniel Jones going against Minnesota, I think a live play. How do you stack Daniel Jones? Always the question. I don't think I would want to play him very much, but a Jones Slayton stack, maybe one, the Isaiah Hodgins tier of guys for the Giants could be live a little bit. Brock Purdy, I don't think for me, low total spot. I really think the Niners defense does the heavy lifting in this one. And also the Commanders defense, despite what they showed on Sunday night, still a pretty good team overall that I think can inhibit some teams. So that was certainly one that I feel pretty good about. Raise It, you can tell, did not watch the beginning of the show. Raise It, go rewind a little and you can see what I did. I literally just showed my DK teams, but I advanced basically the average rate, I think a little bit under on BBM relative to my entries, but I have more than one in every tournament. So what am I going to complain about? If you have more than one bullet alive at this point, and if you get 1 through to week 17, you're in a good spot. Anybody touting anything else besides that is not the best overall. Man, people just coming in here and ask me questions that I already answered. I have 3 moving on in DK. But again, scan back. You can see the literal lineups. I just talked about them. So I appreciate you for hanging out, guys. But I'm not going to just bask in my teams that have won nothing yet. But I'm happy to have 3 moving on DK. I think those are all in pretty good spots. The rest of the QBs here, Ritter, maybe. I think he did show a little bit there, but a guy who didn't pass for 100 yards and also didn't run for a meaningfully great amount of yards as well. Yeah, not doing a lot for me overall. I don't think that's a play you necessarily want to get to. And then I think this is also the time of year where you really have to be mindful, not of Drew Lock necessarily. I saw that Sir Shibe asked me Drew Lock for the win. I do have a Drew Lock team advancing on Underdog. For him, there is moral support primarily. That said, I don't think Seattle calls off the dogs because they theoretically can still make the playoffs. But this is definitely the time of year where you do see a random QB, a random running back pick up the start. Even Tyler Algier last week, I think, really bubbling up meaningfully. Like, that's because this is the time of year where you do see the rookies start to kind of get in the mix more and have a shot to get there. So that's one for me that I think that it's important to really track the news throughout the week. If guys are getting increased reps in practice, I'm not sure the exact example would be necessarily, but like if Houston picks up somebody off the trash heap and they're tired of the Jeff Driscoll, Davis Mills kind of pivoting back and forth experiment, just any of those kind of situations, watch the practice reports closely because you could see a guy who hasn't had a lot of upside get in there. Maybe you could see Tennessee. I don't think they're going to pull Ryan Tannehill at this point, but Malik Willis getting more meaningful run is certainly something that could happen. If he gets that against Houston, that's probably the best spot to do it. But just be careful with the practice reports as the week goes on, especially with the content creators, I think, out there, just not able to kind of pay the level of attention the industry usually does. Running back, I think it's going to be a heavy Derrick Henry week based on ownership, based on DVP here. We're seeing a 32nd ranking. If I had to guess based on DVP and how people perceive the matchup against Houston, I think Derrick Henry right away, I would say probably gets 25 to 30% owned based on how people really treat this Houston matchup overall, where I think we saw Pacheco at 30% in the Millie Maker on DraftKings. And then we also saw McKinnon still pick up some good ownership, but I think it was closer to 15. I would think Henry has a shot to get to 40 to 50% ownership because of the casual players playing. And again, that DVP number right away. So I don't think it's a bad matchup for Henry. I think it's the same thing as I said for the Chargers last week. Hard to imagine how Henry fails, but because of the concentration of ownership, it's hard to imagine him winning you a tournament. So, treat that accordingly with how you're approaching things for Saturday. Even on a Saturday slate, like there's enough games there where other running backs can get there. Again, Rays, I answered the question already, bud. But I'll talk more about Underdog later. But I have multiples in all the puppies and whatever. Didn't get ones and like the ones I didn't enter a lot of entries in. The ones I answered more than 100 in, I have 2 to 4 entries in each of them on Underdog. Ramondre against Cincinnati feels like a not great spot to me. Cincinnati's defense certainly been pretty solid on the year. That said, Vegas was also pretty good against the run, and we saw Ramondre have an outlier day. So I would say, from my perspective, Ramondre, I'm happy to get there in best ball for DFS. Maybe there's some leverage because of that 10th DVP ranking that'll pop up here. People won't play Ramondre very much. But I think in this spot, nothing jumping out meaningfully in the top parts here. Saquon, I guess, coming off the one big day. might get some more ownership than he would get otherwise. 23 fantasy points after being down for so many weeks, I think is one where I probably don't want to play him myself, but I could see how the industry, the field might get there. High total game as well. So Saquon, I might hate a little bit less than usual this week, but I worry that people will steam him up as a pivot to Henry. And then if you get 35% own Henry and 20% own Saquon, that's a lot of ownership concentrating at this 8K-ish range for running backs, and that's not necessarily where I'd want to be. Nick Chubb, blizzard conditions would be pretty good for him. That said, what is Cleveland playing for? Why would you play Chubb at this point of the year? I don't know. I would watch that one closely as the week goes on. Certainly if Kareem Hunt gets an opportunity to showcase himself heading into the offseason, that'd be a positive. And I also think Jerome Ford is live to get some touches because they really liked him a lot coming into the year. He's active. He's available. He's gotten a few snaps here and there. I think he's a guy that it wouldn't shock me to see be there in week 16, week 17, week 18 for sure. Dalvin Cook against the Giants. He's been so bad every week, or so mediocre every week, rather. Got there versus Indianapolis. Did have a couple big plays as well, so I shouldn't shit on him that much. But that said, really outlier game here. You don't see 75 real life points coming overall. It's a spot for me for Dalvin where I don't trust him very much. The Giants, though, soft enough on the ground that you can see them get there. Not a play I'd prioritize, but I think he's live, as he pretty much has been a lot of these weeks recently, around 7K. Tony Pollard going against Philadelphia, tough matchup, man. That defense has gotten a lot better on the ground. I don't see it for Pollard. I actually worry a lot about Pollard moving forward, with Zeke being kind of more of a playoff back, that big-bodied guy you can give touches to and know he's going to hold up. Pollard could kind of shift back a little bit more to a gadget player, which, not in terms of how I view him or how you view him necessarily, in terms of how a team would view him. So kind of play that I think is maybe an interesting tournament option, but would be more interesting if you were like 6K instead of 7K. Sir Shibe asking about Dearness. I don't think they like Dearness that much, or they wouldn't have drafted Jerome Ford where they did last year. So I think Dearness is one of those plays that made sense in the preseason, but now that we've seen the season go on, and it's not like Dearness has been like a meaningful number 3 back. He's been kind of a guy that's been occasionally active, but for the most part active more so if like I think when Hunt missed a game. Did Hunt even miss a game this year? I really don't recall Dearness doing anything of note this year, but I think he got passed up the pecking order, and that's where following the draft capital, following the contracts is important. They were willing to trade him. Nobody wanted to trade for him, so I don't think Dearness matters, and I think he'll probably get played if you did see Chubb get ruled out because of people holding on to what he did last year. But I do think Jerome Ford is higher on the pecking order based on everything I've seen, and Jerome Ford can also play kickoffs, which Dearness can't, so that's something to keep in mind too. Kamara against Cleveland, I think, is a good play. That said, he had no juice against Atlanta, like literally no juice at all. You could see 12.4 fantasy points. It was a really good spot on paper against Atlanta. He did nothing. New Orleans just doesn't use him the right way. Is it possible that you don't see the Rashid Shaheed touchdowns? You don't see Juwan Johnson touchdowns, and then Kamara can get there? Maybe, but his touchdown equity is so low, and he hasn't scored a touchdown in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks now. And the last time he scored touchdowns was he put up 3 in a game, and that's the one good game he had all year. I don't know that you could trust the Kamara touchdown equity. So good week to go back to him because of him being such a disappointment last week. That said, I don't know that you can trust it, and I don't know that I would play it at volume just because of what that risk profile is of how New Orleans likes to attack teams, and also very low total as well. Montgomery with Herbert back in a matchup against Buffalo, not a guy I would point chase if anybody does, given that he had his best point total of the year. Good for them. I don't see that happening again in this spot this week against Buffalo. Walker, I think, is interesting because especially if you see the field start to congregate around Geno stacks with that target concentration for DK Metcalf, I think Walker is a very live play. That's sort of the way that Seattle keeps Kansas City within range, and he breaks some big plays. They run some clock. I think it's been a couple tough matchups for him. Obviously, you saw I have a good amount of Kenneth Walker, so same thing for me on Underdog as well. I think he's a really good player, and I think he's a guy who takes advantage of the matchups that are there that give him opportunity. But going against the Niners, going against the Rams, where he also got hurt, going against Vegas, despite what Ramondre showed, he's basically been in tough matchups now for 4 straight weeks. And then before that, he played a bad team in Arizona, put up 31 fantasy points. Giants are definitely more of a middle of the pack team, but he still got a good amount of touches. Gets the Chargers, showed that upside. I think he's a good play at this point of the year, especially if people are going to be off the scent because of him not being good for a month now or not being great for a month now. Maybe a guy you're happy to get more of an best ball, but I think DFS-wise, certainly a good play. Anybody else interesting here? Algier against Baltimore, tougher matchup than he was facing against New Orleans, but hard to argue this game overall. I still more so care about my Algier shares in best ball than I would care about DFS wise. I think certainly be a lot of point chasing for him. His DVP matchup here is pretty bad though. So I think that's something like it's sixth ranked team probably means the casuals won't go there. So maybe that's where Algier has some juice to go his way. Consigliere bringing up some stochastic content here. Eric was talking about Puppet Eric yesterday with Greg, like he was reliving trauma, LOL. So good. It was good shit. A lot of fun in the stochastic shows I've been doing lately with my pal Greg Ehrenberg, also Josh Engelman. Check out the streams there. You should be watching them anyway. If you're playing DFS, like just put stochastic on in the background. That's certainly what I would say. Besides that, the rest of these guys down here, the only one I really feel the need to highlight is going to be Jerick McKinnon, just because he is going to be probably steamed up. You're seeing that 31st ranked DVP matchup. He's now at 2 straight games, which I know because he's legit the guy who's carrying my best ball teams right now. 2 straight games over 34 fantasy points. It's been weird because these have been matchups where it's felt like he was needed more, where Pacheco's not really moving the ball in a major way on the ground. They then bring in McKinnon as a guy who can get out in the flat and do some stuff. Like, they love him clearly, and they're clearly getting him ready for the playoffs. But I do think McKinnon is a player that I don't know that I would fade this week, but I do think the ownership is going to start to come up because this is now 2 like monster games in a row that have won people millions of dollars, have helped, again, advance a lot of people in best ball. I think McKinnon is not going to be a sneaky play this week, and certainly that ownership will come up quite a bit, with the salary not really jumping meaningfully. Craig said, I only had 2 out of 28 BBMs advance. One was the team I started round 1 with you, scored 181 this week to advance. Hate the team compared to so many more of my good ones, though. Feels like it's dead. I think that's how everybody feels. That's why I really thought it was foolish for people to be so stoked about their advance rates. And I also think some of like the Twitter kind of fucking hand play of people like, I advanced 20% of my teams into the semifinals. Like, no, you didn't. You advanced 20% of your 5 teams. And that's cool. Like, be stoked about it. Be happy about it. But I think there's been a lot of shittiness in the industry. That's why I don't mind just showing the stuff that I have advancing. Because I think if you have multiple bullets going into week 16 and then just one bullet in each tournament going into week 17, you've done all you could. So don't beat yourself up over it. But ultimately, like, I think that people out there are making it look easier or try to make it look easier than it actually is. And I think that's something that, you know, is an anathema to me as somebody that really just tries to be as honest as possible about the prep work I do and all of that. Like with football, people will lie to you a lot in the football industry. And I think that's kind of gross, but you won't get it here. I'll tell you that much. You will know how disappointed I am when I don't win $1 million in week 17. That much I can promise you. Justin Jefferson price tag is so high. I think I'm happy with Justin Jefferson doing what he can do for me in best ball. I don't foresee wanting to play him this week in DFS. That's a me thing, though. Should be a good matchup. Again, one of the highest totals of the week. Jefferson is playing for a lot of things historically. He can still make 2K receiving yards, which would be a thing he talked about in the preseason that he wanted to do, and he's actually within range to do it. So you could play him, but I don't think that his salary makes it real tough, man. And if he puts up 20 this week, like that might be enough for you in best ball, will not be enough to win a DFS tournament. Something to keep in mind there. The rest of these guys, Diggs against Chicago could certainly have an upside day, but it feels like Diggs' upside days recently are more when they need to put up points. I don't think they're going to need it against Chicago, so that would spook me off. We already talked about the matchup with Cincinnati versus New England. I don't love it for the Bengals overall. I especially don't love Chase with this price tag, with T. Higgins back in, with Boyd back in. Hurst should be potentially back in next week, so a lot of passing options to take away from Chase. That's what normally makes him a great tournament play, but when he's playing a great defense, I don't need to force in a great tournament play who's playing a great defense as well. So I think Chase would be a non-factor for me. AJ Brown looks a lot better if Jalen Hurts is in, which is why we are all praying for AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts to be active and functional against Dallas. That is, I think, what we should all just be rooting for as a community, is for the Eagles to do great and for them to win a lot of money for some people in the next 2 weeks of the season. That would be the hope. Amon-Ra St. Brown. I don't even know what this is in reference to, but yes, there are a lot of Trojan educations out there. And some of them are great. Some of them give you enough of a foundation where, sure, you don't work in public relations. Sure, you don't work as a theater minor in the degrees you paid for, but the skills I learned paying $45,000 to $50,000 a year at USC, I'm sure it's like $75,000 a year now. Can't replace him, Consigliere. You just can't replace him at all. As Amon-Ra St. Brown might prove against Carolina. Carolina gave up a lot of production to Deontay Johnson this past week. And the best game of Deontay Johnson's season, I believe, is what occurred this past week. So can Amon-Ra do that same thing as a better version of Deontay Johnson? I think that's certainly plausible. The salary, though, would have been nice if you got a little bit of a discount after 2 down games. Don't mind Amon-Ra, honestly, relative to their salaries and relative to how much they'll get played. You could talk me into playing Amon-Ra over Justin Jefferson just because of the salary difference and the fact that I just think that Amon-Ra's game is a much better version of what Deontay Johnson does. So you need the touchdowns, though, to have the big upside. And as you can see, like when he doesn't score the touchdowns, it is a little bit tougher for him to get there. So that's something to keep in mind with Amon-Ra in general. Other guys, Tyler Lockett being out, DK Metcalf should really come up a lot as a result. Kansas City doesn't do much great defensively. So I think for me with Metcalf, I worry about him becoming too obvious to play because at this salary, he could easily put up a 20 fantasy point day that won't do a whole lot for you. That said, game script, matchup, target concentration, all of that does favor DK Metcalf meaningfully. So I think DK Metcalf is a really strong play this week in a game where you just know the game script is going to go his way. CeeDee Lamb against Philadelphia. He's been good recently, but not really outlier great besides the game against Green Bay. In this spot against Philadelphia, man, I think you have to have Hurts in there to feel confident about Lamb because I just don't think Gardner Minshew can keep up with the Dallas defense. I could be proven wrong there, but I think I would want to see Hurts in to feel confident playing CeeDee Lamb at all. I mean, even then, like the price might not work out. So I wouldn't force in like Hurts if you're playing Lamb, but I do think having Hurts in means that Lamb will have a better shot to actually get there. Terry McLaurin, no, not against the Niners. Ayuk, no. Devonta Smith is a guy that I just don't think is going to have a lot of upside with Dallas Goedert coming back in. You could see his biggest games of the year recently have all come with Dallas Goedert out of the mix. Against Washington, I think Goddard did play, so that's the one outlier there. Maybe Devonta Smith keeps it rolling, but I really think if you have Minshew out there and Goddard coming back in, I think Devonta Smith is a play that people might play because of the last few weeks, but I really don't think I'd want to be there unless Hurts were active. And even then, I think it could be a little bit of a thorny play. Olave, he's just getting gobbled up by whatever the Saints are doing with the gimmicks with Taysom Hill, with Rashid Shaheed, Jawan Johnson. I just don't think he has the ceiling that he might have had earlier in the year. Hopefully I'll be proven wrong because he did sneak into enough of my teams in those Saint stacks. But Olave, to me, man, he's just getting squeezed enough in a way that's not helpful for him. So big tournament play, but in GPPs, like you'd be happy playing 5%. I wouldn't play him more. The rest of these guys here, DJ Moore, honestly, kind of a good spot for him. He's getting fed pretty well relative to the low target volume overall, the low passing volume that Carolina's bringing to the table. But you got 6 targets here, 6 targets here. You can get there versus Detroit. You can absolutely get there. I wouldn't have a lot of faith in it necessarily. And if he's a chalk play, like I probably wouldn't play him. If he's not a chalk play, I'd play him. One of those kind of guys. Slayton, high total game. He's the only guy on the Giants that actually gets targets week to week. That said, 7 targets for 23 yards is not doing a lot for you. Slayton, you could talk me into playing a little bit of, but not a guy I would certainly expect a lot from. Everybody else down here, maybe it's the Gabe Davis outlier week that hasn't happened in literal months. I don't know, but it's your mileage may vary there. I'm happy to take Gabe Davis in best ball and not play him in DFS at this point. Same thing for Tyler Boyd. Drake London, I thought looked pretty good against Atlanta and again, or against New Orleans rather. And again, watch that Hayden Winks video thread that he posted on his Twitter as well. I thought he did a really good job explaining Ritter's game as well as London and how London really made some nice plays as well. London's a dude that I think is really going to benefit from having another young QB. He's got 11 targets in 2 straight weeks, playing Baltimore sneakily bad against the pass, especially downfield. They have also played some really ugly games since Lamar went out. So if Lamar is back in, maybe that means more pass game production overall. If it's Huntley again, you can see them kind of do the bare minimum to get through, and that could make it ugly for London on his side as well. Jacoby Myers, don't trust him with a lateral. That's the main takeaway for Jacoby Myers this week. Nobody else here. Marquise Goodwin, I would watch just because no Lockett in there. Goodwin has been more of the one-to-one replacement for Metcalf historically. When he missed a few games, that was a lot of Goodwin actually getting out there, getting some burn. That said, I guess Goodwin could run a little bit more out of the slot and play that Lockett role. It has not been the main thing he's been doing, but you could see, I don't even know who else, like Penny Hart was playing some routes for Seattle. That's when I'd have to dig in a little bit more. But I think there's got to be somebody who benefits from Lockett not being in there. And it's probably first and foremost DK Metcalf. But if Metcalf gets shut down, you could see an outlier day for Goodwin. You could see an outlier day for Noah Fant, who runs outside a decent amount as well. There's some ways for somebody else to get there for Seattle just because of the fact you're going to be passing so much. Short Gamer saying on fans, 3-31 in BBM3, all drafted in June. 1 out of 35 on DK, had like 10 score over 180. I had one that scored 205 in advance because of AJ Dillon getting pulled yesterday, so that much killed me. Yeah, but besides that, though, I mean, look, again, any team's advancing is a good thing. Guys, I said it already. I got 3 on DK and more than 2 in all the big tournaments on Underdog. What? It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter. I could have 100 advancing. If I don't win any money in week 17, like, it doesn't matter. And I don't care. Like, I'm not going to be told otherwise. Like, anybody who's touting their advance rates as though it's credibility, I think is making a mistake. Be stoked about your advance rates, whatever. For me, I'm happy to get 2 in Best Ball Mania, happy to get 3 in DraftKings. Like, I would say anybody who is prioritizing anything besides that, besides what happens in the last week, just like, don't sweat it. And I don't know why this became an industry thing. Like, it's not proof of my ability for anything. Trust me. I could say that as somebody who drafted 25% Trey Lance, 25% Darren Waller, 25% T Higgins. Like, I've had a lot of teams that got fucked there. So I'm not proud of my advance rates, but I am proud of the teams that I think could win in a week 17. That's what matters. All you need is one sperm out of a million to make a kid. That is the best way to view it, I would think. Travis Kelce. If Seattle pulls their side of things, Kelce can absolutely have an outlier day. He ends up winning the Millie this past week. I talked about Kelce all week long, thought he was a great play, had him in a lot of my lineups here, which helped me get ahead of the field overall. Even though the Juwan Johnsons of the world, I think, could have gotten you the same fantasy points, maybe a little bit more. Kelce is a play that I think you pay the premium knowing you're going to get production. Again, the Chiefs are playing for a bye. The Chiefs are playing a team that can score. These are all positive things for Kelce. And if you did this against Houston, imagine if Seattle actually puts up some meaningful points and puts a scare in them. I think it's a really nice spot for Kelce again this week. And I think he's a guy too, like in your tournaments, like you should be afraid of Travis Kelce's upside because he did this fucking 23.5 fantasy point day, no touchdowns. Like, imagine if you put 3 touchdowns with that, you'd be absolutely screwed. So that's definitely one of those things that I think you need to be mindful of here. Kittle, I like down the home stretch overall. I feel like this is one of those things that I'm hoping does well in best ball, but for DFS, I don't really care about. What did Juwan Johnson put up last week? So a little bit less than Kelce. So by that metric, but obviously you'd rather have Juwan Johnson's 22.7 DK points at a $3,800 salary. So Juwan Johnson, I don't think I'd chase that necessarily for myself, but he is certainly one way that Kamara fails and everybody else fails. And he just keeps getting there. Like, this is not a great game log. 2 targets. Did he get hurt in this game against San Francisco? It's against the Niners, so you throw that one out. But like, a lot of steady games here, a couple spike upside games. I wouldn't chase it another week in a row going against Cleveland with a low total, but Juwan Johnson's certainly a guy that should have been drafted more in best ball, honestly. It didn't get drafted at all because people fell in love with the Taysom Hill tight end thing. But Juwan Johnson, nice big body dude who makes big plays and has outlier days. Great player, but not the guy you want to chase after a big ceiling week. Nobody else down here. Josh Oliver has kind of moved ahead of Isaiah Likely in terms of production lately. It's a good matchup against Atlanta. We all know what I'll do this week. I will play some amount of Mark Andrews this week just because I do that every week, because I've now lost money on Mark Andrews every single time he has played for this entire time period. I think he won 1 milli maker in here, which didn't help me out very much because he beat every other tight end relative to salary. But like, God, he has just been bad since week 6. And I don't know if you could expect another outlier day. If you get it, again, you might want to get it in best ball, though he killed some of my best ball teams this past week. Mark Andrews, I think a play that the salary makes sense. If you see a lot of ownerships going Kelce's way, I would probably consider Mark Andrews, but I really thought Tyler Huntley was going to be the fix for him, the panacea for what ailed Mark Andrews, and that has not been the case. And I just don't know that I have faith in Mark Andrews at this point, which means, of course, he's going to go off this week. Let's take a quick look at the Christmas Day slate real fast. And again, guys, if you're new around here, please hit the like button. Please subscribe to the channel. New videos daily, other than, for Rams Green Bay games where I'm sick and dying on the vine in terms of mental burnout. But tomorrow, the data video where I go game by game for everything and identify some key stats for Football Outsiders, PFF, Sports Info Solutions. That's coming out tomorrow. Thursday, I'll have a showdown video. Friday, I think, I don't know if Pete will be back. I think he probably won't based on him not doing his own content this week. So I might get a guest on Friday. If not, girl Pete, ready to go. And if you missed the Friday video, I would recommend watching that one because that got real weird in a fun way. So check that out, where I did have an AI bot from Replica doing the ride or die picks for Pete and doing, I would say, as good of a job, if not better. Let's look at the Christmas Day slate real fast. But Craig saying anybody bragging about advance rates or credibility is silly. So you're bragging about your lucky darts on Zay, Osborne, McKinnon, Gage. Come on now. Wild Week 15 variants hit us all hard. That's what makes for an interesting last 2 weeks, I think, because like Osborne, I know carried me through on a few. Zay carried me through on one. McKinnon, as I talked about, like he's a guy on all my DraftKings teams. But I do think like those plays all made sense. The issue is what do you have with them? And that's where I think the questions are going to come up these last few weeks, because if not all of them, but like a large majority of the Diggs Adams teams are dead, a large majority of the Mark Andrews teams are dead, I would assume. Travis Kelce teams, I think, probably made it through. But like, what weapons people have now to go with those guys who pushed them through from that last round? I don't know. I know I have a lot of Justin Jefferson and a lot of AJ Brown, so I feel good about that part of it. And I think that's where the zero RB thing starts to get a little bit confusing to navigate, where some zero RB configurations absolutely killed you that week. Like legit, I would have gotten through so many more teams if I had Adams and Diggs going through, but you're more live if you have those top receivers because of that upside they can create, where like Derrick Henry, if he puts up 20, that's not enough to get you through probably, especially if guys like Algier, guys like Ramondre, guys like McKinnon are giving you more. So something to keep in mind there if you are worried about your team overall. My guy, Lunchable Connoisseur, saying Girl Pete was co-host of the year. Easy, that's true. And we've had so many great ones come through. But yeah, Girl Pete was a star. And, look, I did see on the replica subreddit that apparently the sexy selfies they send are not worth the money. So something to keep in mind there as well when I don't pay for AI to get nude on a stream. All right, let's keep going through Saturday's or Sunday slate, rather. This is Christmas Day one. Again, I think Tua is the best play on the board by a wide margin. Obviously, I guess though it's in Miami, so weather not a concern. To me, Tua stacks, I would think, will be the highest projected and the best plays on the board relative to that Vegas total and a bunch of the other games being lower scoring. So Tua won't be a surprise to anybody, but I think he is the best play by a wide margin on that slate going against Green Bay. They have nothing to play for. They're also not good, despite them looking better than they probably should have against the Rams yesterday. So Tua, to me, this could be the redemption spot for them. And I hope so, especially if Jalen Hurts doesn't play. Tom Brady against Arizona. This is where he should also really pad his stats. I think he was very fortunate to have the lead they built up on Sunday. I thought the Bengals were going to boat race him. They ended up getting there in the second half, or I guess from the second quarter on. That said, like Tom Brady is not good this year, and that offensive line is not good. And with the Russell Gage outlier day and Godwin looking passable, I get it. Arizona's D is so bad that it's certainly possible he can have a good day here. I think I'm comfortable playing him on the Sunday, Christmas Day slate. But fuck, man, he's not good, man. And if he's roping you in because of him looking okay for a quarter and a half and then not doing anything the rest of the game, I feel like you shouldn't get roped in. It's like Tom Brady is done, and he probably should retire after the season based on what he's done this year. Aaron Rodgers, don't know what he's playing for. Positive vibes, though, for them. Like, I actually thought Green Bay was kind of a fun team to watch yesterday. Also important to note in this game, A.J. Dillon left the game with a concussion. I don't know if he had an actual concussion or if it was a protocol thing, because he seemed cheery and moving around the sidelines and whatever. That's something to keep in mind here that could concentrate some of the production for Green Bay. Green Bay's going to have to score points against Miami. They're not calling off the dogs so far. So it seems like Rodgers safe to play, should have a positive game script for him as well. Probably a pretty good play on Christmas Eve, or Christmas Day, rather. It's hard to keep these games straight. These are all Christmas Day games, to be clear. Kyle's not coming back unless I buy the sexy version of Girl Pete. Was she not sexy enough with her personality, Kyle? That's the question I would ask you. And Short Gamer saying Vikings and Jaguars going to be chalky week 16 and week 17 for best ball. I'm curious to see how the Jags do on Thursday Night Football, because this Jets defense, it's a low total game as well. It's a pick'em game, which makes you think the Jets defense is going to bring it. Kind of feels like it should be an ugly one. That said, I thought Dallas was going to make it hurt for what Jacksonville does overall. They did not. Jacksonville's been rolling and playing really well. So if they could beat the Cowboys defensively, they can probably beat the Jets defensively too. I think the Jets are a little bit better overall, get less pressure, but better in terms of coverage. So I'm curious to see how that goes on Thursday Night Football, but I agree. I think the Jags might be the team that, at least Zay Jones is part of it, I think could wildly disappoint this week. And if he gets you 10 fantasy points like he normally would, he's absolutely killing your team, especially on Underdog. Nobody else here, I think, worth pointing out. Baker Mayfield, Denver is still trying defensively. They're not going to be a team I'd want to go to. Russell Wilson, I guess, or Rippon, I think you can make a case for. Rippon actually looked pretty okay relative to the accuracy numbers. 21 out of 26, not 200 yards, though. That was a better matchup against Arizona, so I probably wouldn't play him against the Rams. It just kind of feels like an 18-15-ish game with field goals and a safety for this one with Denver and the Rams, so they are an ugly team to play on Christmas Day. Aaron Jones, if you get A.J. Dillon out, that is going to be a big thing, so I would certainly watch that one. James Conner, he's okay. For this kind of slate, I think this is where you play James Conner. I think on Stochastic on Sunday, Greg had asked me, or one of the chat maybe had asked, hey, James Conner, how do you feel about him? I was like, James Conner, probably great in a showdown if you're playing the Arizona-Denver showdown, but for main slate, I wouldn't play him. I get the volume's still been there, but like I just don't think he's a play with like real upside. I'm going against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay does let teams stay in games, but I just don't see it for Connor at one of the highest price tags on the slate. No, thank you. Would rather go Mostert's way, especially if Jeff Wilson is out. He has a great game here. I wish I'd advanced more Mostert. I drafted him so much, but he didn't get any of the teams for the most part that I think I moved on. So he's hitting his stride at the right time here. Going for that. And these numbers against Buffalo are crazy because going against Green Bay is a lot softer matchup for him. So he actually could be a tournament winner for sure if you don't get Jeff Wilson out there. Latavius Murray, boy, this is a real proof of concept of what you're getting on the Christmas Day slate, by the way, guys, because we saw Aaron Jones, and now it's just immediately goes down to Connor, Mostert, Fournette, Dylan, who might be out, Latavius Murray, Rashad White. Like, this is ugly here. Cam Akers against Denver, you can make the case to play him, as I did on Showdown yesterday on the Deposit Kingdom Discord, if you're not a member on there. Didn't make the video, but did say specifically to play Cam Akers, so I'm glad that worked out. Cam Akers not showing much of a ceiling. Feels like he might not even have enough of a ceiling for a 3-game slate. I don't know, but it's Christmas Day, so maybe a Christmas miracle comes for Cam Akers fans and drafters in particular. Tyreek Hill, slate breaking upside here. Tyreek double stacks him to a Waddle. Would love that for Christmas Day slate. Hopkins got fed pretty well, but another QB downgrade for him. I don't know. Tampa Bay's defense is actually pretty good as well. Kind of feels like Tampa Bay should roll in this one, but Tampa Bay, again, finds ways to disappoint, so I'm not sure about that. Godwin, you kind of need Arizona to push them a little bit more, and if they have their third string QB out there, I'm not sure that's going to be the case. Same thing for Evans, who is just like not vibing with Tom Brady at all. Does get his highest target count since week 9, though, so that's a positive, but doesn't get a lot of results on it. Interesting tournament play, though. Like maybe Mike Evans scores a couple long TDs, and that is what calls off the day basically for Tampa Bay. So I wouldn't hate Mike Evans on a 3-game slate. Watson feels like he's getting cut into by both Dobbs and Cobb and Lazard, who still runs a ton of snaps, even though he's fucking useless yesterday. That absolutely was dreadful for me. Jerry Jeudy, high target count again. If Sutton's out, you can get there purely on target count. So don't mind Jeudy very much. And everything else here, does Marquise Brown play? I don't know. He seemed like he didn't want to play on Sunday, did play, got banged up again in that one. So your mileage may vary with that one. Just a real dumpster fire week. Going back to Tutu may be interesting just because he was so bad on Monday night and got played pretty heavily because he projected well on every site out there. Tutu, the kind of guy who can absolutely break open a 3-game slate. I think really the one obvious play here is going to be that Dolphins double stack. Mike Evans, I don't mind. Guys like Tutu, I don't mind. I would certainly be willing to play. These guys can get there in 1 or 2 plays. I think would be the most appealing overall. Oh, tight end is ugly. Yeah. Don't play anybody at tight end. I guess would be the thing. Trey McBride, maybe if you get Brown out, he's coming up a little bit. He should be a better player than what he's shown so far. Like he was legit a high profile prospect coming in at tight end. So getting to target him now before he has an upside might be appealing, but Dulcich against the Rams feels tough. I was surprised he didn't have a better day against Arizona's bottom ranked tight end defense. Feels like Rippon is kind of locked in on Jeudy for the most part. Yeah, I mean, play whatever you want at tight end and spread it out. Just honestly, spread ownership out amidst all these guys would be my one thought right away. All right, we got a few seconds here, so let's talk some chats. We'll hop off after that. Matt's got a Lawrence team, and the DK Millie Jags are looking good. I agree. I just worry about those teams that are not there week after week. Like, that's why, to me, though, like if Hurts doesn't play this week, and then the Jags put up a competent performance against the Jets, like they absolutely can get there. That's at a short week game against a tough defense that you know is going to play conservative and try to run some clock just to keep Zach Wilson off the field. It's a tough spot for the Lawrence teams. I think I have a few advancing on Underdog, and fuck it, I'll pull it up. I'll pull up Underdog too, so we can go look over there. For the people that were asking questions earlier, you can look at my Underdog stuff. But they have not cleaned it up as well, so let's see what we have. Still advancing in Scott Fishbowl. No much on this contest. I've actively not played it or tried to get in for the last few years because I just feel like I'm noteworthy enough. They should just give me an invite and expect me to come in. It's still a season-long tournament, right? So like I would think you're still playing close to the middle projection for that one and not trying to get too cute. But I think if you're live at this point in anything, like you're probably feeling pretty good about it, and you should. So I would say you're probably as live as anybody out there. All right. Best ball. Where are we? No, they didn't move stuff, did they? Oh no, here we are. Okay. Let me present the screen and then we'll get my underdog stuff out of the way so you guys will know that I'm not bullshitting you about all my stuff on here. Best Ball Mania. Here are the teams that got screwed. This is my team with Pete that did not advance. That would have been very nice if it advanced. You know why? Because it's got Drew Lock in it. Got Drew Lock with Matt Ryan, Dak Prescott, David Montgomery. I think Pete's only share of David Montgomery for best ball season came with me, and he almost got there. David Montgomery was one of the good parts of the lineup this week. Wasn't a good part, Ronald Jones. Either way, Debo being hurt, not great. Pittman, Devonta, this one just didn't have enough juice to get there, even with Travis Kelce putting up a respectable day, but with no touchdowns. Hard to get there in a half-point PPR site. This one is another one I'll share that was pretty disappointing to me. Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. This is a really sick construction that I really liked a lot. Also got Pollard right, got White right, got Herbert, got Mostert here. This team would have been good, but Pollard, I think, based on what I saw from my teams, were Pollard, Ramondre, Josh Jacobs, those three carried a lot of the weight for my teams. Pollard did not advance very much for me. So I worry about the Pollard teams, or worry about the advance rate of the Pollard teams. They might not be there very much. The Diggs 8.2, brutal. The 7.6 from Gabe with the Diggs 8.2, really brutal. Just a bummer, because I think this kind of team, like so many guys who are still healthy and out there, obviously independent of Darnell Mooney, this team would have been pretty good for week 17. Certainly for week 16 would have been fine as well. But that's not the best one there. This is my best team. And ironically, with Trey Lance being a dead spot that will not play again, Joe Burrow, A.J. Dillon, Devin Singletary, Ramondre Stevenson, Tyler Algier, Kenneth Gainwell, Brian Robinson, then at wide receiver, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, T. Higgins, DJ Moore, Ayuk, Dotson, Peoples-Jones, and Laviska closing it out. The irony of me having a team with Laviska advancing to the semifinals without Pete on it. And then George Kittle, Cole Kmet, solid team here. This one is shitty. This one only put up 138, but that shows you how much of a luck box thing it is to advance to the semifinals, because it's all about the rooms. Like I legit, again, on DraftKings had a 205 DK point team, which is my best scoring team. Did advance, and there was a needle to thread where if A.J. Dillon scored one more time but didn't score so much, I could have gotten 4 teams across on DK. But that's what is the margin of success in this one. So that's why I would say anybody out there that's like, my advance rates, I'm still alive. Like, it just doesn't fucking matter. It's all a matter of luck. It's all a matter of the groups you get in, especially when you get to week 17. It's then just a 450-person tournament on Underdog, a 1,000-person tournament on DraftKings. So, like, none of it really matters until week 17. So you get anything through. If it's strong enough to hold, great. This team, I would need an outlier day for Fields probably, which feels tough to expect. Burrow, we talked about Cincinnati, tough matchup against New England. Dillon, Gibson, Herbert, fucking Benjamin, Jerick McKinnon, all dog shit players. This one needs wide receiver upside from Justin Jefferson primarily. Bateman is not going to do anything. Claypool's not going to do anything. Hamler's not going to do anything. So I think this team is DOA, but it got to the semifinals, so woohoo for me. I think I have some better puppy teams, though. Let's see there. Where are we? Oh no, these are my dead puppy 3 teams. So they moved some stuff around here. Okay. Here we go. Here are my 4 advancing puppy 3 teams. You guys wanted to talk best ball, so I'm giving you some best ball here. All right. Cousins, Goff. Oh, this is a weird one. Aaron Jones, Rashad White, Herbert, Jamal Williams, Pacheco, Jefferson, A.J. Brown, Deontay Johnson, fucking Bateman, Olave, Lazard, Osborne, Terrace Marshall, and Isaiah Coulter for the stack with Justin Fields, maybe. I don't know why I went to Isaiah Coulter here, but I did. Dalton Schultz, TJ Hockenson, not a great team, but still hanging out there. Maryland Tim and me advancing in this one. Here we go. Here's my Drew Lock puppy team, guys. Puppy 3, me and Drew Lock advancing together. Zach Wilson still somehow alive in this one. Zach Wilson might be the guy who gives me points in week 16. If you want to know how dumb best ball is, the quarterback who was underperforming, who got benched for another guy, who was playing entirely because the other guy broke his ribs. This is a guy that my entire fates are relying on in week 16. That's why advance rates don't matter. That's why this is all pretty dumb to talk about too much unless you win the money at the end. Running backs are terrible. James Cook, Darrell Henderson, Naheem Hines, Michael Carter, Brian Robinson. But again, if they just give you 10s and you get the wide receivers to pull the weight, you can get there. Jefferson, Higgins, A.J. Brown, Metcalf. This team is honestly pretty well positioned in terms of the receivers, not well positioned relative to the QBs, but I don't mind it overall. This team in the puppy advancing, Hurts again, Cousins, a lot of Hurts Cousins teams for me advancing. Pollard, Michael Carter, I don't know. It really just comes down to me for Justin Jefferson and AJ Brown. Like, that's pretty much it. If these guys have one more good week, I'm going on. And if not, I will have nobody alive in week 17. And we'll be very sad, and they'll be very focused on playoff best ball and drafting those gauntlet teams moving forward. Jefferson, Higgins, Brown. This was really the key configuration for me. Jefferson, AJ Brown, some Gabe Davis, but like Algier, a positive. I hope this shows to you guys, like, again, how me being real about it. I don't think it's easy to advance. I think there's a lot of people out there that are making it sound like, yeah, if you're really good at football, you'll advance some teams. No, you have to be good at football and inherently very lucky to move forward. So for everybody who's got teams moving on, you should certainly be proud. Ross saying I should play Sarah McLachlan music for my dead puppy teams. Yes, they are all in the arms of an angel right now. Thank you for their service. I'm excited to get some extra money from Underdog coming back in for whatever the minimums are for advancing. But besides that, the end of the day, week 17 is all that matters. As Pete talked to you guys about, as the industry, the people who are sharp out there talk to you about, anybody who's touting their advance rates on Josh Jacobs back, where are they now? I wonder, where are they now? Would be the question I would ask. And I won't pull up a snarky Twitter handle right now for you guys. Follow me at Chris Spags. Follow the show at Splash Play Pod, of course, on social media. And before you go, please make sure to subscribe, like, and comment. 5 days a week of content here, other than the occasional day where the fucking game sucks and I'm burned out. Sorry, I hate missing a video yesterday, but I just couldn't will myself to do it because my throat was also killing me. So besides that, though, lots of content here on Splash Play, and I will tell you like it is. I'm not going to pull wool over your eyes and try to make it seem like fantasy football is easy. It is not. I say that as somebody, like, my full-time job is at Football Outsiders. Like, I have done the work. I've worked at Stochastic. I've done shows for years. I've done content for years. I've spent money gambling for years. This shit ain't easy. So if you want to ride with somebody who will tell you that the shit ain't easy and then we can do the work and try to make it happen, subscribe to Splash Play, hit the like button, leave a comment down below. And I appreciate each and every one of you hanging out here. Shout to the chat as well. Spags, when do we victory lap our Tyler Algier exposure? In week 17, Short Gamer, is when we're going to do that. Hopefully he keeps it going, though, because would it shock you if Tyler Algier put up 5 next week? No, sir. It would not shock me, but we got him right for 1 week, so take the victories where you can get them, guys. Keep it going, really. If you're fighting in your regular season playoffs or whatever, your season-long league playoffs, your best ball playoffs, drafting playoff best ball and Underdog, use the promo code SPLASH, double your deposit up to $100. But really, though, like, good luck to you out there, because this is hard. This time of year is hard, man, and don't let other people victory lapping their lies, their bullshit out there. Like, don't let them get you down. At the end of the day, what you put in is what matters. What you get out of it is what matters, and I hope you get something out of it, guys. So I'll be back with you tomorrow for that stats video. Come back for that one. Otherwise, I will see you guys soon. Good luck.